Hello and welcome back to Everything Boats with Captain Frank Lanier, where we discuss boats and boating, from maintenance and repairs to seamanship and safety, as well as everything in between. This podcast is a companion to my YouTube channel of the same name, so if you like and find it useful, be sure to subscribe and please check out my YouTube channel as well, where you'll find hundreds of informative videos on pretty much every boating topic imaginable. So today's podcast is based on a segment of my YouTube channel called Ask Captain Frank. And this is where I take questions from my YouTube channel viewers, customers of my marine survey business, or just people randomly calling me up trying to get me to answer shit for free. So today's question comes from a previous client. I did a survey for a guy on a mid-sized sailboat, and one of my recommendations involved batteries. He had two different types of batteries on board, and I described the situation, and I said, hey, you need to do this or that to correct it. And his question came about because of one of the recommendations was that you need to have similar battery types, whether they're AGMs, wet cells, gel cells, whatever. You need to have similar types on boards. So his question was, well, how do I resolve that, and why do I need to resolve it? So I gave him an explanation. In this particular case, he had a couple of wet cell batteries, and it had one was the engine start, one was the generator start, and then he had a couple of AGM batteries, absorbed glass mat batteries, and those served as his house bank. And the problem arises when you mix battery types like this, as I explained to him. All of these batteries, well, again, whether they're wet cell, AGMs, gel cells, lithium ion, whatever, they all have different ideal charge voltages. In other words, they like to be charged at certain voltages to keep them up to snuff and keep them, properly maintained at a proper charge level. And they all have different levels. So in this particular case with this boat, he had these batteries, but he only had one battery charger, and it was providing the same charge voltage to the house bank of AGMs and to his start batteries, which are wet cells. And his alternator for his engines, you got one charge output for that too. And what that does is, if you have these mix of batteries, one of those batteries they're not going to be receiving the ideal charge voltage. Either the battery charger was going to be set to, and it was it was not a smart charger per se. It had like a little switch where you could charge to AGM, wet, or gel. So if you set that, for example, in this particular case, he had it set for wet cell. Okay, so that means that the wet cell batteries are going to be charged by the battery charger at a proper voltage. However, the AGM batteries were not going to be receiving the proper charge voltage, and they were going to suffer for it. What does that do? Well, if you don't have the proper charge voltage, then the battery life is going to be reduced. The lifespan of them is going to be reduced. You're going to waste money. And so how do you solve something like this? Well, there's a couple of ways. One, if you have a smart charger that you have two different legs, right? Let's say you have a leg you can put to the wet cells, then you have a leg that you can put to the AGMs, and your battery charger is smart enough that it lets you set different charge voltage for each of these legs going to these batteries. Now, for your alternator, that output's going to be set to one or the other. So you're going to have to configure that where it's charging one of these batteries types. If it's charging the I would say you want to have it charge the start batteries, then you would set it to that, and then you go from there. The other side of the coin is that what's even worse, it's okay to have, ideally you want them all to be the same type. But if you have to have different types, you want them separated, like, okay, this is the engine start batteries are wet, house bank is AGM. What's even worse is to have a house bank, for example, that has a mix of AGM and wet cells or gel cells or whatever. Once you have that mix there, no matter what you do, some of these batteries are going to get the short end of the charging stick, because there's no way that you can put a leg from a charger to this house bank that's going to mix of batteries, and one of them is going to be where they're not charged properly. So the bottom line is that, if possible, all your batteries should ideally be the same type, at least the same type.
wet cells, AGMs, gel cells, whatever. If you can't meet that, then you should have proper charging alternatives for each of those batteries. If you got a battery charger, smart charger that can separate and put separate legs on them, charge them at their ideal voltages, then that's good. I've seen setups where you have, the alternators charging, the house, or let's say the alternator or the battery charger is charging one type of battery, and you may have an alternative power source. You may have solar or wind turbine or whatever, and you set that to charge, specifically the house bank or whatever. There's a number of ways you can do it. The key thing is you want to do it correctly no matter how you do it.
I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if so, and you want to buy Captain Frank a cup of coffee, please click on the support link in the text description below. All monies received, not spent on coffee, will go towards making even more awesome podcasts for my channel. And as always, thank you for your support.